Hello and welcome to Symbols and Secrets, the podcast dedicated to mind, mystery, and magic. Our goal is to help you create more meaningful experiences for your audience and hopefully translate that into a successful career. This show is hosted by a longtime veteran of the mystery arts who has worked with Fortune 500 companies and toured all over the world as a performer and also as a high-paid consultant, speaker, author, trainer, and more. And here he is, your host, Jonathan Pritchard.
Thank you for that introduction, Malcolm. And yes, hello, I am Jonathan Pritchard, your host for Symbols and Secrets. This week, we've got a great conversation lined up for you. I got to know him when I lived in Chicago, both working at the Chicago Magic Lounge all the time, and I was really fascinated by his background and experience. Now, like most of these conversations, this is just a snippet of all the topics that we get to cover. So if you would like to hear the full uncut conversation, you can do that by supporting the show for just a couple bucks a month. To do that, go to symbolsandsecrets.com/secret, where you can join up for free. Then I'll take you the rest of the way. So that's it for the introduction. I want to get right into it, and I will see you at the end of the episode.
Hello, I'm William Pack.
Outstanding. Welcome aboard, William Pack. Rewind us to the beginning and let us know, how in the world did you get interested in magic in the first place?
You know, I find that question always interesting because most people just say, oh, you know, I saw a magician when I was a kid and now I'm a magician. But that's bullshit, really, for the most part. It's a much more complicated thing than that. And certainly as a kid, I used to get the Marshall Brodeen magic sets.
Exactly the one I started with.
Yeah. I think TV Money Magic was the first one I ever really remember sort of work. But half of those tricks I couldn't do from the instructions even. And most of them you can only do once, because if you try to do it a second time, people would figure out how they worked.
Mm-hmm.
So those sets were not really conducive to making me a magician necessarily, but it did kind of foster some interest and stuff. And I was always kind of into it. And I loved, I got to see Doug Henning at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago. That was the most amazing, mind-blowing show I had ever seen in my entire life. And, but as a kid, about 11 years old, my older sister, 6 years older than me, she ended up getting a job at kind of a novelty costume magic shop. She ended up being manager of this place. And she had no interest in magic. So, in fact, magic was a very small part of their business.
Maybe one standing rack kind of thing, a freestanding.
But couple cases, they had some magicians working there, some local magicians and stuff. So it was more then, and it actually phased out through the years, more because the costumes was a huge thing, because there weren't Halloween stores everywhere those days. This was the place to get Halloween stuff. And they had a novelty room where if you wanted to go to a bachelor party or bachelorette party, they'd have that. I mean, I was 11 years old, packaging drawings of wrapping paper of people in sex positions, Kama Sutra type positions. So that was kind of a learning experience for 11-year-olds, certainly. And so I got a job there, sweeping the floors, doing odd jobs for $1.50 an hour on Saturdays. And I stayed till I was 21.
Wow.
By 13, I was doing sales and stuff. But by 12, then I started doing magic shows, kids' birthday parties and stuff like that. So I was learning from the other magicians there, certainly. The other thing that really, I think, comes into most magicians becoming magicians is I had 3 older sisters. They were constantly in trouble. My parents were dealing with them. I was left alone most of the time. My father was an alcoholic. And so there was, again, if he's drinking, just go to your room, don't bother him, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of time alone. And I did some fringe shows. And in the fringe show, I talked about how, as a child, you have such a loss of control. You go to school, regimented control. Home, there's often a lot of control there too. Although at my age, we were still able to leave the house, and then they come back like hours later. Just go do whatever, and then come back when you're done.
Come back before
That was
the street lights come on, kind of thing.
Exactly. But a lot of times I was in my room. I was a reader. I was a nerdy kid. So I was stuck in my bedroom. And that's where, you take a coin, you vanish it, have it appear somewhere else. Suddenly you have control over the universe around you. And I think sometimes magic does, whether we think about it or not, is our sort of capturing control in the world. And so I think those things led to me becoming a magician. Plus, man, I loved working at the magic shop. I thought someday I'm going to own a magic shop. Thank God I never did that. And the other magicians, it seemed like a cool life. I thought it was going to be an easy way to make a living. It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Has that been kind of one of your main sources of income, constant hobby, and fill in a combination of the two? Now, what's been the professional side of that?
So it's never been a hobby for me, which is another weird thing than most. Never really, even when it was a kid with the sets and stuff, there wasn't sort of really a hobby because I didn't do it consistently or a lot or anything like that. It's always been a job. So I've always looked at it that way. And so that's why outside of me doing my job, I don't really perform magic. I know magicians that carry a deck of cards all the time and coins and stuff and do magic everywhere they go and stuff. And fine, if that works for them, that's great, but it's not my thing at all. Because, we don't expect a doctor to do that. We don't expect a fireman to, my hobby is putting out fires. Also, that kind of thing. So I try and do it that way. So yeah, I've always earned my income partially from just performing, and then partially grew up in a blue collar family, and it's always, you got to have a real job. So I worked a lot, I had periods where I didn't work in magic shops, but I worked a lot. I spent, 34 years of my life working in magic shops.
Wow.
In 2 stints. So, I mean, that was a lot of time doing it.
Right.
And, it's just, so that was the other part of it. And now I branched out. I do, these adult education programs in libraries, which I really love doing, as another part of it. So there's certain segments there.
Okay. So it's kind of one of those things of you started magic in order to have some control and something that you have a say over, but that didn't translate into, this is the only way that I've discovered to interact with other human beings. So magic is my love language and my communication language. The only way I could connect with somebody else is through a card trick. That wasn't your path. It was more kind of mercenary, like, this is my job, this is what I do. And when I'm off the clock, I'm off the clock. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, because, the last thing you want is your friends, and I can, air quotes on that friends thing, because they only invite you to the party because you're going to do some magic. And I saw some of that stuff and had some of that stuff. So I wanted people to want me there because I am me, not because of I'm going to go there and entertain everyone. And so I kind of drew those lines. But to be honest, I am most comfortable on a stage. I am more of a wallflower. If I don't know the people, especially, I am the quiet person at the party.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And that's the other thing, because sometimes, and you know this from being in the business, there are people that are on all the time. I did say bullshit earlier. Can I actually swear? Is it okay to swear?
Yeah.
You'll have to put an explicit label on this podcast, but
this is part of the secrets. Not everybody will hear it.
People that are on all the time drive me fucking crazy, because they never feel authentic human beings. And so I really like to, I want that to, I don't need to be the center of attention all the time.
Right.
The only time I'm the center of attention, the only time I'm in really full control is when I'm on stage,
Right.
when I'm performing.
You don't want to be the dancing bear of a friend group. You actually
Right.
want friends, and also you want your friends to know that you value them as people, not just walking, moving props to workshop things on all the time.
Right.
It completely makes sense. And I'm pretty much the same way. If I'm in a huge group of folks that I don't know, it's like, this isn't my show. This isn't my stage. I'm not going to be the big blue screaming monkey here. Let me just settle back. But when it's time to go and you're on stage, you're like, this is my office. This is what I do for work. I'm comfortable at my job. So yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So as you're kind of growing up, working at the magic shop and doing different kinds of shows, how else did you get your flight time in front of audiences? Kind of anything and everything that would give you $1 you said yes to, so you just went for everything. What was your pathway there?
Well, because of, young age, I was doing a lot of kid shows, but I realized I hated them. So there's a point where I just said, I'm not going to do kid shows ever again. And I haven't since. I did restaurants. There was a place when I was in my 20s at that point, a place called Bit of Magic, which was magic themed nightclub, restaurant. They had a stage, they did stage shows and stuff. So I performed there on a regular basis. Still had, those years, early years, I had quite a bit of performance anxiety also. Again, being a shy kid, kind of doing this thing that's out of your shyness, outside that shyness. It wasn't until much later that I got rid of that. But it was, it was anywhere. And during the 80s, the late 80s, every bar had like a comedy night. And so I was doing tons of those kinds of things here and there, quite a bit. It was just learning stuff, learning how to be in front of an audience, being comfortable, trying to watch as much magic as I could at the Bit of Magic and stuff like that.
I want to zoom in on the getting over your stage fright kind of a thing, because I had a similar thing too, where like, oh, this is super uncomfortable. I would rather be holed up in my room reading a book than in front of a large group of people. And you get used to it. So for anybody that kind of is going, I would love to be a magician, I'd love to be a performer, but I've got stage fright too. What was your way into being comfortable there?
My way is probably a way that most people couldn't do now. I got a job working at Magic Masters on Navy Pier. And this was a chain magic shop that was all over the country. And they were a pitch shop. So you do a scripted pitch for the tricks. Sometimes you do a big pitch for a huge crowd of people. Of course, that job forces you to perform. As soon as someone walks in the store, you're really a salesman, not a magician in that case, but you're demonstrating magic. You're a product demonstrator in that way. And that forced me to perform. And after a couple of years of 8 hours a day, 4 days a week performing, it didn't matter. I had no anxiety over it anymore. It stripped all of that away. And I've also kind of, sometimes I think it's tied up in people's egos because they're so worried about being accepted on stage like that and stuff. And I don't care anymore. I'm going to go do my thing. And if people come along for the ride, that's great. And luckily people have been coming along for the ride. They like what the point of view that I have.
That makes sense. Right. Yeah. That tends to line up with what I would tell somebody too. And it just goes, buck up and go do it 1,000 times.
Yep.
Then come back and tell me if you're still freaked out. You'll be bulletproof.
Lots of practice gives you confidence, and just lots of performing.
Yeah.
Makes you comfortable.
Yeah. And there's another part of your history that I wanted to go over, kind of in the early 90s when you were a dealer and a cheat. So how how did that happen? And do you see a big difference between magic magician and card mechanic cheater and move monkey kind of stuff? I'd like to dig into that a little bit.
So I won a couple magic contests with an act that I had created, kind of a red skeleton tramp, kind of drunk act, manipulation act. And I thought the world, I didn't know anything. I didn't really learn, again, much later in life did I learn anything about what show business was, the business part of it. I could do the show. I knew nothing about the business part. And so I thought after those contests, people were going to beat a path to my door. And no one, literally no one did that.
I just won this huge thing and I'm going to be booked up for 3 years from this. Not one phone call. Yeah, that's got to be a wake up for you.
Yeah. And so I was kind of not working much. And this opportunity came along to deal for this company called Rockford Casino Players. It was the highest grossing charitable games company in Illinois. But there was also a bit of some scamming going on and some ties to some criminal ties, let's say, so, to the outfit, as we call it in Chicago. And the pit boss that came in when I was started, and most of it was just dealing. At that time, I was just dealing. The guy that comes in, my pit boss, named Ken Odo, he was an old card counter from Las Vegas. And he really knew the game and understood how it worked, blackjack. And he started teaching me some stuff, sent me in the direction of some books and stuff, and really understood what I could do, whether it's even with a 6-deck shoe, how I can control, when you have a 6-deck shoe and you have an even distribution of cards, the automatic mathematical edge will work on your people because there's an inherent mathematical edge in the game of blackjack. If you have an even distribution of cards. Now, but there's also that cut card that they put in. So you cut out a few cards. If that distribution of cards that they see has more high numbered cards, face cards and high numbered cards, the players are going to win more. If it has more low numbered cards, they're going to lose more. And so I can watch the deck as I'm dealing, understand where those clumps of cards may be, and either I can break them up in my shuffle, or I can get them to a spot where I know they're going to get cut out of the deck, out of play. And so I can tip the odds into my favor. Working like with a 2-deck, which is a hand-dealed game, then I can use more sleight of hand. I could peek and stuff. Really, the most powerful thing you can do with a 2-deck deal, or even a single-deck deal, is to know what with the dealer's up card is the most powerful card. Because if it's a 10 face card, 9, people are going to hit and they're going to bust.
So they're going to try to chase you up to going, well, he's probably
Right.
got 19. I can only win with a 20 or 21. So let me just chase this rabbit, and then they go over.
Exactly. Depending. So if they have a 16 and I have a 6 showing, they're going to stand pat and hope that I bust. So they have a chance of winning. If they see a 10 and they got a 16, well, the rules, the system kind of tells you that you should hit at that point. And of course, they have a good chance of busting at that point. And so that's kind of what I did technique-wise as far as cheating. I spent about a year doing this. One of the things is, because a voracious reader, one of my things that I love to read about is gambling and con men and that kind of thing. And the thing that separates is, I think most magicians fancy themselves as these kind of rogue characters. But the truth is, most of them could not perform the sleights that they do under real game conditions. And the difference is, if you're a magician and somebody catches you in a trick, you suck as a magician. If you're a card cheat and somebody catches you doing a sleight, you're going to have your hands broken. And so there's a lot more pressure doing that. And I never knew at that time if I could have that pressure, deal with it. Turns out I was able to. But it's not something that most magicians can do, I think. I think they would ultimately be too afraid to truly, if they knew the stakes were possibly their life, they're probably not going to be able to do that kind of thing. And that's really the difference between being a magician and being a card cheat, is the inherent danger in being a card cheat.
Right, that kind of downward pressure on showiness. Because I've often wondered, is it because magicians spend so much time practicing something that should be invisible, but they at least want to get more credit for it? So you don't know what happened, but there was some kind of awkward weirdness, and you go, oh, I don't know what that was. I guess it sure was slick. And then the magician goes, haha, I did the thing. But a card cheat, it's got to be actually invisible and genuinely natural. So yeah, so I was just today years old when I thought about the house employing cheats as well. Like, for some reason, it just, I guess, in my head going, the house already has an advantage over the players by the nature of the rules. And in the long run, it would play out. But you guys were further tipping the scales in your favor by having you as the powerhouse to ensure that it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, I was kind of the stopper when it going in. Plus, I dealt really fast, gets more hands out, helps the edge work a little better. The thing with this company is that they were playing, most charitable game companies, they take pushes, they go for really low stakes and stuff. We were going up to $10 stakes. And so it could be some big hands, and they were skimming money off. And so they needed to make this, not only to pay the dealers, which isn't supposed to be happening in the first place, but also to just give themselves a little bit more. Also.
Okay. So right. So you and those of your ilk were there to create the margin for the whole operation to get paid behind what the statistics would dictate should be happening. So you created that gap for the whole operation to work.
Right, because the charity got, according to the charity, got like X amount of dollars. And then there was this great scam also, because the rental of the equipment was like, you couldn't make more than what the charity made. So say the charity got $1,500. Well, the rental of the equipment was $1,500, and the management team to run everything was $1,500. So already the company's making $3,000 instead of $1,500, and then they're getting whatever's on top of that. And I was the only one that was kind of doing this. Most of the other dealers were just dealing, only because I was the only one that had the skills to do that sort of thing,
right? So,
and probably the willingness.
Right. So it's kind of a hall of mirrors layers. So it's kind of like, oh, I work for this charity. It's great. Like, okay, well, you're not in the club. And then we've got you, the mechanic. And now you're in layer 2 where you're actually doing the work, and it could all happen. And there's plausible deniability, because it's not like you're sitting there in the break room going, boy, I sure did cheat those guys really well tonight.
Right.
I did a great job scamming them. Right. So how do you manage the conversations and that kind of a thing?
Well, the conversation at the table obviously is just, most of it's procedural stuff because we're playing the game, but sometimes, part of why I left is because I started becoming friends. They were regulars. And I started feeling bad that these people, I would warn them. I'd come to my table and say, I'm pretty hot today. And they go, okay, I'll see. Maybe I can win something. And then I'll just,
destroy them.
Yeah. So that's why I left. The company ultimately got indicted. The two people that were kind of really running it disappeared to Canada, and I don't think they've been seen since, as far as the stories that I've told. Now the company reconfigured themselves. They're Rockford poker players now, and then they just do poker tournament type stuff, which is easier to do. You don't have to skim because you're getting an automatic rake and stuff to do this. So that's a little different. The other thing is that I then got a job working for Hollywood Casino in Aurora, but I couldn't deal because of my past. Just being a magician makes them scared to let you be a dealer. So I ended up being eye in the sky, which is the cameras on the ceiling. And my job was to catch people trying to steal and making sure all the procedures were being taken care of and that sort of thing. And because I had, I was taught card counting, I could catch card counters pretty easily because I can count down the deck while they're playing and stuff as I'm watching on the video.
So when their behavior matches how you would be playing by counting, you go, okay, that matches the pattern. Let's kick them out. You went all in a thing that I just decided to avoid, which was oh, you're a magician. You're fancy with cards. Therefore, if you win, it had to have been because you're cheating. If you lose, boy, I thought you would have been better at this. So there's no scenario where playing cards is fun, even with friends. So how did that bleed into your everyday life of having fun playing card games?
Well, I played because I came from a card playing family. So I played with my friends, but they knew I wasn't going to cheat them. We never played for really big stakes. So it wasn't like, when you're playing dollar poker, you could win a little, lose a little, whatever. And yeah, they knew I wasn't going to cheat them. There wasn't any point to doing that. But these were old friends of mine. So they were long-term friends.
Got it. Yeah, because the friendship is worth more than the penny stakes that you'd be getting from them. So yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Got it. So working at the Hollywood Casino, being the eye in the sky, and I guess doing the crooked work helps you recognize it from other people. That was kind of one thing I was wondering is, what's the job training for that? How is it that somebody is going to know whether you can do it or not? Like my guidance counselor didn't tell me, okay, Jonathan, you could be a cheat hunter, right? Like that, that's not a thing. That's even farther out there to me than magician, because magicians, you at least see them on television, but card cheats tend to lay low. So how in the world did that even happen?
Well, like I said, I originally went to try to be a dealer, and that wasn't going to happen. So I kind of shifted into then becoming surveillance, is what it's called. And part of your job is just to watch money go from one place to another. Some of that stuff isn't easy, but what'll happen is a pit boss will call up. There is some testing beforehand. You have to learn the games and how they work. Because then if there's an anomaly, you can understand what the anomaly is or how much the payout should be, and you can watch those things. But then a pit boss will say, this guy just been playing for a while, winning quite a bit. Could you keep an eye on it? And then we'll keep an eye on the game for a while and see what happens, that sort of thing. Some of the other surveillance people, they would learn some of those things later on as experience of doing this stuff. Hey, there's something weird about this girl. they followed her, and then they saw her stealing from people and stuff. And I mean, there's some crazy stories about that kind of thing, but it's just, it's just kind of learning on the job more than anything, because at that time, it was a brand new casino just opening up. Most of all the other people in my department were, cop wannabes. They all had their degree for that, and they were all hoping to get into a police department somewhere along the way. And they were either, except for one, I had a retired cop from Milwaukee who was just kind of putting in extra time for Social Security, a higher Social Security check and stuff. And so that's how most of it was. I was the only one that kind of like, this could be a career for me if I wanted it to be.
It's great. It's great. So as we are kind of wrapping up on the back end of things, is there anything that you think would be important to include that we didn't get a chance to go over?
No, the only thing I would say to people is that to try and follow, even when people say no about things, try and follow what you feel is right. You'll figure it out if it's right or wrong on your own. I was told many times, as you said, like when I do my needle trick in my regular show, no matter where I'm at, there's a little bit at the beginning that kind of gives a little bit of the history of it. If I could go back in time, I'd like to go back to 1918, Hippodrome Theater in New York, largest theater in the world. One man stood on that stage, the giant stage, did 2 tricks, the vanishing elephant and the needle trick. And then I'm going to recreate it. We think he learned it at the 1893 World's Columbian Exhibition. I'm going to try and recreate it the way he did it, using the words that he may have used. And then I pause and I do it in a historical thing. And you could never do that in a corporate. You can't do that. You just got to do the trick. You just got to do the trick. This is a big name mentalist that's a good friend of mine. You just got to do the trick. You can't do all that story stuff. Can't do the trick. Literally every time I do that trick that way, people love it. And it reinforces my feelings in it and how it elevates that trick in some ways. I see people sometimes complain about, why are we saying, this magician did this, why don't you just do the trick? But it gives it some gravitas and it gives it more meaning to them. And so if that works for me, might not work for you, might work for somebody else, but whatever direction you want to go in, you got to try and do that direction until nobody will pay you for it. And if nobody will pay you for it, then you need to find a different direction. But if people will keep paying you for it, you're following the right direction.
That's great. Keep at it until the paychecks dry up, then pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
I love it. And for the people who do want to check out your book and your website, give us all the ways that we can get plugged in with you.
Well, williampack.com, libraryprogramming.com, and, the books are available on Amazon also. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
So big thanks to William for stopping by the show, and thank you for listening this far. If you enjoyed what you heard, go tell your friends about it on wherever it is that you hang out with people, online, offline, meet space, wherever it is. Let them know about the show. If you stuck through it this long and didn't enjoy what you heard, I'm impressed you got this far into it. So tell your enemies about us. They deserve it. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much. Looking forward to connecting with you in future episodes. I'm out.